This is CE training for TRN 12 Revision 3. If you are currently using Revision 2, I will explain the differences between 3 and 2. First thing you do is you make sure you have all your reagents. This goes for any ATM that you're running. Here, the main things to have are the SDS kit, the pipettes, the tubes, and the CE vials, caps, and inserts. You'll also need a container of water. Make sure to properly label the water. Let's go ahead and begin. Please read over the entire TRN. After you read the TRN, there'll be a quiz. Please go ahead and take the quiz. This way you can turn this quiz in at the end of your training. After the quiz, you'll see a ATM or the training module for this TRN. In here we outline everything. This is a typical ATM that you're going to see, and we're going to go ahead and skip to the prep. Also, another big thing you're going to need is a lab notebook for training. Please make sure you have this because everything you do here will be recorded in your notebook. This notebook will be turned in with your quiz and your results, and everything will be graded and turned in to For this assay, I suggest using the 0.5 Eppendorfs. As long as you label your rack, you don't necessarily need to label every tube with every bit of detail. So hence, I went ahead and labeled my tubes. I have a blank and a molecular weight. If you are using TRN version 2, it also asks you to prep an IgG standard. This you do not have to do. You can skip that part. The only thing we're going to prep is the blank and the SDS molecular weight standard. First, we'll prepare the blank. Let me go ahead and break this down. Inside the SDS kit, you're going to find all the reagents you need for this ATM. This is your sample buffer. This is your gel. Please do not shake the gel or mix the gel at all. It'll create bubbles, which will in turn mess up your run. Then you have the acid and the base. This is your capillary. This kit comes with 2 capillaries. All these reagents can be signed out of the stock room. If you don't need a kit but just need a capillary, you can sign out a capillary box from the stock room. It'll have 3 capillaries in it. Right now with sample prep, the only thing we're concerned with is the sample buffer. The kit also, when you sign out a kit, you will need to go to the refrigerator and pull out the 10 kDa internal standard and the SDS molecular weight standard. Everyone should have also gone through basic pipette training and lab safety already. For pipetting, for sample buffer, I like to reverse pipette. This is not required, but since this does have tween in it, I like to use a reverse pipette method. When reverse pipetting, please make sure that you have plenty of space in here. This is a 200 tip. I'm using a 100 pipette. This way I don't suck anything back into the pipette. I'm going to angle and dispense. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to discard my tip. The next step for the blank is to add BME. BME is stored in the hood and needs to be pipetted in the hood. So therefore this sample is ready other than the BME, which we will add later. So I can go ahead and close that vial. Next we have the molecular weight size standard. Again, I'm going to reverse pipette, but I'm going to set this to 85. Notice I wipe the tip as I come up with the SDS sample buffer. And then I discard the tip. I add the sample buffer first because this is the largest amount, and since this is in all samples, it is less likely of a contamination regardless of us emptying the tip off each time. We're done with the sample buffer, so I'm placing that back. Now I would need to use the molecular weight size standard. And this is going to be 10 microliters. If you have a 10 microliter, please use it. I am not going to reverse pipette on this one. However, when I add any type of sample, I always place it barely in and pipette up and down to make sure I've dispensed and mixed at the same time. The next step in that would be to add the BME. The BME again is added inside the, oh, we do need the internal standard. Sorry. We need 2 microliters of the internal standard. So I will close the 10 KDA. I personally like to use a 2.5 when pipetting 2 microliters. You can use the 10, but I prefer the 2.5. Again, we're going to do it the same way we added the molecular weight marker. Pipette just what you need. Do not reverse pipette, and mix when you add. Both samples are going to need BME, so we're going to go ahead and go to the hood and add the BME. Now that we've added the BME, we're going to vortex each sample. Each sample I like to vortex at least 5 seconds whenever I have SDS added to it. Now, after vortexing, you always want to spin your sample down to make sure all the sample is all the way down for proper heating. So we're going to go ahead and do that. This can be done on a desktop centrifuge. The new ATM will reflect that. ATM version 2 does not say that, but all can be done on a desktop. Now that we got our samples spun down, we can go ahead and heat our samples for 10 minutes. Make sure to use a timer for heating your sample. The way you set a timer is you click which section you want to go to. We're going to go to 1. Increase it to 10 minutes. After I put the very first sample in, I click start and start the countdown. Now that we've heated our samples, you will notice there's condensation at the top of each vial. So what I like to do is go ahead and tabletop centrifuge each one of these samples down. Now that we've spun our samples down after being heated, we can go ahead and let them cool for 5 minutes. After they've cooled, we can then transfer them into these vials for testing on the instrument. Go ahead and pre-label each vial so that you know what they are later on. Just a note, this all needs to be done inside the hood because this has BME in it, and BME needs to always be pipetted in the hood. And since the samples have BME in it, they have to be loaded into these vials into the hood. These currently do not have BME in it. They only have water in it for right now, so that I can just show you an example of how to load the samples. Each one should have roughly 100 microliters inside of it. So you want to set this to about 90. It doesn't have to be exact, but set it to about 90. These are the inserts that go inside of here. You want to pipette and have a little bit down at the bottom. You don't want to see any bubbles actually in the sample. Then you want to start at the very bottom and pipette up and watch. Make sure there's no air bubbles in there. After you're done, don't go all the way down and just remove the tip. These just place directly inside, and then you cap them. Repeat the same thing for each sample, and I'll show you. You want to pipette up. It's great to have a little bit down at the bottom because that way you know you don't have any air bubbles inside. When you feel this, you start at the bottom and pipette up, leaving a little bit that you're not going to discharge. That way there's no chance of an air bubble. After you do that, transfer your label. You can dispose of these vials. Those vials need to be disposed of in the hood because they have BME still in them. Your samples are now ready to be put onto the system.